Welcome
to the Bring Me to Life podcast.
It's time to wake up
and shine on. All right, hello. Welcome to another episode of the Bring Me to Life podcast. We are excited to be back. We took a little bit of a break there to do a transition of ourselves, and sometimes we need to unplug so we can wake up and shine on too. I'm excited that Selomon and I have got some good juicy topics in the lineup for you.
Yeah, we do have a good lineup, and we talked about it in the Bring Me Life community on Facebook. It's so hot here in the Appalachian Mountains right now. It's summertime, and we're actually doing this in a different room, so we have a little bit of a different setup because it's so warm, but we want to get back to you all. And on the community Facebook page, we have a list from now until September with all of our podcast topics, as well as our workshops and our events for Patreon. Those are there as well. And so if you're on Facebook, check us out at Bring Me to Life Community. It's a group. Everybody's welcome to join, and it's where we like to keep up with the community right now.
Yeah, and we've also got our Patreon where we will be releasing some special offerings. I got a card reading that we're going to release. We got sound healings and some other stuff coming up. So feel free to check us out on the various social medias. And if you haven't already, there is a bunch of new amazing episodes from various podcasters on the Bring Me to Life website and other podcast feeds. So go check out bringmetolife.com with the number 2 and let us know what you think. And yeah, so today we wanted to talk about actually kind of finding joy in reflecting in things that brought your younger self joy. So this past month, while we've been kind of unplugged, I've been really doing a lot of my own soul searching and reflecting on stuff that brought me joy in my younger years, or even things that I didn't necessarily thought brought me joy, but I was put in the right place at the right time to experience them, and it's helped me later in life.
Nice. I really enjoy this one because I think most people have some sort of childhood trauma or something that's affecting them now that happened when they were a kid. So to be able to go back and look at that work is really important. It's important that we don't just ignore it. And I think that old adage of suck it up and push through it is shifting into more of, hey, it's okay that you're experiencing it. Just accept it, acknowledge it, send it some love, and know that it's going to make you a better person, hopefully. It'll be fine. It's okay, yeah. So we had to move around. I don't know if you guys can hear, but we're on the couch right now, so you might hear us moving around. But
100 degrees where we're at, so we got to navigate ways
doing what we can
to stay plugged in and connect with you guys. But it's actually kind of funny that we are kind of just navigating this, and we're all cozy on our couch trying to stay cool. And I was doing a lot of reflecting even this morning. You were talking about trauma, and I was reflecting on how my younger self would probably be, pretty proud of me. There's definitely things that, we all wish we could be doing better. Mm-hmm. But I've been definitely coming more into a version of myself that my younger self would be really excited about. Someone who's dancing more, someone who's singing more, someone who's creating a lot of art, and also just like expressing myself more in clothes that I wear, or my colorful hair, or experiences that I want to go on, and different things that I'm working on right now. Like I've been working on a book, and my younger self always wanted to be an author. So the fact that I've been putting in that little bit of time to continue writing and doing things like that would have brought my younger self joy. But I also did some reflecting on the times in my life where, my younger self may have been either scared or overwhelmed or traumatized. Like you said, we all have this younger trauma that's coming up. And I've been noticing a lot more where I feel like there were times in my life that, for a lack of better term, I've been calling it patronusing myself, where that's a pretty good loop in the movies. Do you know what I mean when I say patronusing myself?
Yeah, because you're talking about the Harry Potter franchise where he ends up seen a Patronus in one timeline, and then he goes back to the future and ends up being that Patronus that he saw. He was the one that was actually creating that, like, for himself. Like, he was protecting himself.
Right. But in the movie, he thought that he was his younger, or he thought he was his dad, actually. Sorry, spoiler if you haven't seen the movies, but he sees this energy and it protects him, and he thinks it's his dad or his spirit guide or some protector, and really it's himself. And I've been having these realizations as I've been kind of tapping into these meditations where they send us back to our younger self. And they recently did a meditation. They were like, all right, so visualize yourself as you're an ancestor. You're the ancestor version of you, your future self. And they're writing a letter back to you now. And then I did another meditation where they had me now reflecting back to my, like, 6-year-old self. And my 6-year-old self was dealing with a lot of trauma at the time. I was losing a parent. I was transitioning schools. I was moving houses. I was going through a really intense time. And I remember just having this sense of energy that everything was going to be okay. And that I was going to find a way through, and that I wasn't going to be, like, heavy or scared or anything like that. And that the adults around me were always kind of like, you handle things really interestingly for, a young child going through these traumatizing things. But I always felt like I had a sense of a friend there with me. And I realize now that I'm probably Patronusing myself with these meditations. I was sending myself now back into the then times. And I've been trying to do that more. So even with things that I may have been afraid about, like dancing or putting my art out there or singing or taking the chance. And I'm starting to see myself now go for more opportunities at those things. And I can feel my future self sending back the vibration, like, it's okay to explore now.
Nice. That's a very beautiful way of putting it. And childhood work is key to move forward in life, especially if you feel like you've been held back. And I look back at my childhood and I see a lot of pain, a lot of trauma and things that I wasn't willing to acknowledge then. That I'm starting to see now. And just like you, it's a powerful practice when you're able to meditate and send your trauma love, like that moment where you felt abandoned by a parent, maybe by both parents or friends or siblings, and visualizing in a meditation, love could be a feeling to you. You could see it as a color in your mind. You could see it as an energy, or whatever you need. Just imagine sending that version of you experiencing that trauma, love, and peace, and understanding that you will learn from it, and that it's not a pleasant experience, but one that you will be able to move through and allow it to improve, your life. And I think that's a big thing of childhood, working with your childhood trauma and just your kid self. Some people like to visualize themselves as their parents, as their own parents, and being the perfect parent for them. Our parents, they do the best that they can, and I don't think anybody's parent is perfect, and we all have a lot that we go through with parents, especially with, fathers and sons, and I'm sure mothers and daughters have a lot of that kind of energy too. And being able to visualize your own self, like as your own parent, maybe you get a little different perspective, like a different perspective on what they were witnessing, because going through puberty is a lot. Like, we have a lot of emotions we lash out as teenagers, so like you get a new perspective on that. So there's a lot of different ways we can go with this work.
Definitely. And I think it's important too to remember, you said something about being your own parents. Like, sometimes parents don't realize the things that are important to you are as important to you because they weren't as important to them, and we're each our own individual person. So something that we want to talk about was tapping into creative outlets or other forms of expression that you may have enjoyed as a child or wish to explore as a child, and bringing them into your day-to-day life in the now. So what are some things that maybe you enjoyed doing as a child that you find yourself exploring even more now?
I liked to hike as a kid. We had a little park near my house where, I'd go out my back door. And then right near my fence, there was an opening right to the park. So I had a park right there in front of me. So I would always go out to the park, and some trails were in the woods. It's not like here in the Appalachian Mountains where the trail will go forever. It's just like a tiny trail where you can go in through a parking lot and come out like a little bit on near the road. But I love to explore. I went back actually to those trails and saw that they were all covered up, like hardly used at all. And, when I was a kid, a bunch of us were always back there on our bikes, walking around, just being in the woods. And that's a huge thing that I still really enjoy. Making silly little videos. I loved doing that as a kid. I never got to the point where I was able to put anything together, like, completely. Just had like little ideas that I maybe did something with, but then didn't quite get to where I wanted it to be. But now I'm working on videos, and I'm working on a sci-fi series. And so, hopefully I'll be able to move forward and continue that and develop that, because cinematic art is one of my favorite art forms.
You've been making YouTube videos since before YouTube was cool.
Yep, I've been on YouTube for a very long time, and I used to do solar flare videos where I would just kind of like watch the sun. That was in like 2010, and I've been on YouTube for much longer than that, but that's when I started getting really into it, and all of a sudden there's just like 20,000 video like plays on one video that I released like really, really fast. And I was like, whoa, this is crazy. And then I started Bring Me to Life, went on an adventure, and then I never got on that channel again. And here's a little Easter egg. That channel's name is Clausen_Chris, I believe.
Interesting. Yeah, you've been making videos for a long time. I think videos have been a big part of my life for a long time as well. I used to enjoy when we would get different projects at school. We could do like different types of presentations, and I was always trying to edit videos and make little screenplays and interactions with the groups. I also have been messing with websites and designing logos and things since before I even knew exactly what logos were. Remember, I used to design things and tell my aunt that she should get this put on her shirt for her business or this, that, or the other. And it's funny that I'm still doing branding and stuff now, but art in general has been huge for me. For as long as I can remember, just smearing paint all over paper, or I never really was into chalk, but I've been finding myself kind of explore more with charcoal and chalk, even as much as it's funny. I used to have kind of like an inside joke with my friends, and even the different teachers knew that I hated the feeling of chalk, even though I was an artist, and they would always try to get me to write on the chalkboard or use chalk pastels, and it was kind of a phobia of mine for a while. But recently I found myself using even chalk pastels in my art as I explore and try to expand through some of my childhood fears and frustrations. So it's funny to see what kind of creative outlets stick with us. Dancing I used to love as a kid, and I went through a phase I talk about all the time how I wasn't like allowed or able to really feel into that, and now even more so than yoga or exercise, like finding ways to dance and move my body has been really powerful to healing kind of my inner child. And there's just so many different outlets. Some people may like writing or even telling stories. Some people may enjoy gymnastics or running. You love jumping all over things and climbing things.
I like jumping and climbing.
I'm surprised you don't do more parkour.
Maybe if I had really gotten into it when I was younger, I don't know. It's not something that was really like, this is what I was made to do, I'm sure I could have been good at it if I wanted to, but yeah, and I don't know about now. I don't know if I would pretty intense. I mean, I could probably do like little stuff. Like learn.
What's something that you would like to explore more that was something you may have done as a kid?
Something I would like to explore more that I did as a kid. I mean, writing. I really love writing.
You have a journal from the 3rd grade.
I don't
know many guys with a
it.
journal from the 3rd grade.
Yeah, but I've gotten away from it. I like to get back into that flow of writing. What else? So like, I'm basically like kind of still. I still jump and.
You're just an evolved kid. You haven't changed much. Something that I am excited about is recently some of my friends picked up roller skating again, and I was really excited to possibly roller skate again because that was something I really loved as a kid. I loved roller skating and doing like the limbo and like the different silly dances and stuff on skates. And then there was a phase I went through where I was afraid of falling. I was afraid of getting hurt. I was afraid of being made fun of, so I stopped. But recently, a bunch of girlfriends I have started roller skating again. I was trying to manifest skates. And I told my aunt, like roller skating's back in style. And she was like, what? And she just disappeared and came back and she manifested my mom's skates from the 80s. And my mom's been passed away for like over 20 years. So the fact that she still had my mom's skates is pretty crazy. And they fit me perfectly. So I'm so excited to like go back to that childhood energy of just like roller skating and playing and just having fun and kind of like breaking through those fears and barriers.
Yeah, I used to love, I would rollerblade a lot as a kid, like a lot. And one time I remember we had a dog, a Chesapeake Bay. Her name was Tia, and bless her soul. And she was a very vicious guard dog. Like to us, the family, she was just so lovey and happy and sweet and nice. But anybody she didn't know, she was like super aggressive towards. But anyway, I was one day on my rollerblades, and then I was like, I wonder what it would be like if I hitched myself to my dog, and my dog would just run and carry me around, and I would just have a great time.
You can see my face. I'm just like, oh, this is such a you thought.
Yeah. So I did it and got her on her leash, took her out, got on the road, and I was like, yeah. And she started running, and it got really fast and super scary. I did a lot of shit like that as a kid, and it was all very scary.
I mean, you still do stuff like that now as an adult. When our friends Breezy and Jesse were recently here with their dog Villain, I'm pretty sure you were riding his one wheel while holding Villain at one point. So, I mean, some things just don't change with you.
Yeah. Well, we got going so fast, I had to like jump on the grass, landed on my stomach. Luckily, I held on to my dog. Because if she got out, she was always on a leash, which kind of was sad to me. But if she was off, she would run around the neighborhood for a long time. She was one of those dogs. You would have to go and spend a few hours chasing her. So I held on to that chain, onto that leash.
I still see you get really excited when there's dogs around that you can play with, or animals that will just kind of roughhouse with you. You love playing with your sister's dogs, and you've always kind of really connected with animal energy. Do you think that's something that stems from your inner child?
Probably. I've always loved animals, and when we were kids, my mom, like, we always had a cat or a dog or something, and my mom told me that I would always try to take care of the cat. Like, one time I built a little house for it, and like, I didn't know what I was doing as a kid because I put the cat in like a Tupperware and closed the lid, because I built a little house for it. I put like food by it, I put some water by it, like, and then as a kid I thought I was like making a nice little comfy home for it. I was like, here's your home, you can be all comfy in here. And then my mom came and was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm built a house for the kitty. And then she's like, you should not put a lid on that. That is not a good idea. And I'm like, ooh, as a kid, like, you want to do nice things, but sometimes you don't know that you're causing harm. Like, I was trying to do good, but I was causing harm because that cat was not supposed to be locked away in there.
I mean, sometimes that happens with parents and stuff too, though. I had a recent situation with somebody I work with. She was struggling because her parents wanted something for her and she wanted something else. And, you know, she was having a hard time seeing both perspectives. And I was like, you know, sometimes you have an animal, like if you don't have a kid yet, like you have an animal and you set up a nice habitat for it. You think you're creating this beautiful habitat, this space, and giving it an opportunity, but really you're caging it up inside. And the animal just wants to explore and to, you know, go out and have a great experience. But who's to say sometimes, you know, like if your habitat had holes in it so that the cat could breathe, and, you know, maybe it was in a dangerous zone, who's to say that the habitat that you created isn't better than the out now, you know, like maybe the in was better than the out now.
Yeah, I didn't have holes, but if it did, you know, who knows? I was listening to an episode of Sarah Hall today. It was on Bring Me to Life Radio. We're doing 24/7 right now. And so we're kind of like, this is our first test. We're doing a whole week, 24/7 live radio. And I was listening to it today, and this morning we had a Sarah Hall podcast on. And she was talking about it and said that sometimes you got to think about it like the universe is a parent trying to, you know, provide a space for you that's safe, but that you can also explore until you're ready, until you've learned, hey, you know, if you fall in here, you might drown and die. So while we're learning all the rules of being able to be free and explore and what's going to help us and what's not going to help us, like it's okay to be in that like more controlled environment until you're ready to be in that freedom.
Yep, that's kind of where I was getting at too. Like definitely if your container for the cat was not ventilated, this is not a good space. That's not what I was trying to say. But what I'm saying is sometimes there are habitats that are created, and it's because the people in power, they don't know better. The person that's in power of the situation, like you were in power of the situation, you didn't know better that wasn't a good habitat for the creature at the time. So sometimes as children we get put in habitats that, you know, the adults or the older beings don't necessarily know better. So it might not be the most nourishing environment until you get to be in a space where you can be in control of your environment and create a space that you can flourish and nourish yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for you, what if you had a space like that, what was one thing that brought you the most joy within that little container of, you know, this is a proper space for you to be?
You mean growing up?
Yeah.
What was one thing that helped my container?
Yeah, what was one thing that maybe you weren't allowed to explore as much as you'd like, but you still had this thing that brought you joy?
Well, I was in a really interesting situation where I bounced from a household where I had complete free reign over my reality to a household where I had a lot of supervision and eyes on me that were slightly, I don't know if judgmental was the word. They were worried about my well-being. And something that I really enjoyed as a kid growing up was, like I said, creating art, but it was also connecting with spirit in unique ways, because I've always seen the world around me as a container. Like you said, like we're in this almost like a video game. And I always loved exploring connections with like angels and herbs and things around me, like tools, spiritual tools, I guess. And though my family was pretty conservative and closed-minded in a lot of ways, I was always allowed to play with these certain tools and kind of explore them. And that has nourished my spiritual well-being as an adult. I can't say that they enjoyed when I started bringing witchy books home and stuff in my teenage years, but they never stopped me from connecting with crystals or creating art. And for a long time, I even kind of talked to what my family would call as my imaginary friends and what I now call my spirit guides or my angels as a child. And for some people, it was really weird and scary and awkward, but for me, it was very comforting. And there were certain members of my family that, though they didn't necessarily understand it, they let me explore it because they thought it was the healing. And it was never like, oh, Shannon's talking to voices, she's crazy. It was, whatever this is helping her. So we're just going to find a way to nourish it so that she is allowed to explore it and not think she's crazy. So, like, looking back, I'm actually really grateful that I wasn't, you know, like, forced to stop. There were times that I felt uncomfortable and I didn't always share it on a bold level, but I never felt like I wasn't allowed to explore and be me. And that was something that really helped me as a child and as an adult.
Very nice. And I'm sure it's probably hard as a kid to kind of like a cat, like go from one environment to another.
Yeah, it was really hard going from one environment to the other as a child because I'm sure I kind of felt like a divorced child where, you know, you would go from mom's house for a week to dad's house for a week. But for me, it was a little different because my mom had died and I was going to her parents' house and they were very different than my mom. Had I been bouncing back and forth between just my mom and my dad, I think it would have been a unique experience all of its own. But I was going to a generation that was older than my mom that hadn't been used to having kids for several decades to then raising me. And then my dad, who was just such a free spirit, and he was very street smart and was raised to be a survivor. And he, you know, like taught me to be tough and taught me to, you know, not I don't know if taught me was to not cry was a good thing, but he taught me that, you know, like I didn't have to cry. I didn't have to be so sensitive that everything made me feel immobilized, because as a child there for a while I had, like, you know, they say that fight or flight or the freeze. I would freeze a lot or I would flight. And he taught me, you know, like it's okay to breathe and not necessarily be a physical fighter, but somebody who can look in the face of, you know, a situation and not be terrified and
stand up for themselves. Someone who can do that. Yeah.
And on the other side of the family, they often would freeze, but then they would have a different kind of rational thought process. They thought a lot more about the future rather than the now. So I would often get two different perspectives: the survive in the moment, the be in the now from my dad, and the think of the future, think of the bigger picture, think of the people around you in a different perspective from my mom's side. So yeah, going from one environment to the other, from freedom to complete almost immobilized thought. Like I had to constantly think about what every little thing was going to affect every single person around me, kind of thing. Very different realms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand that. My parents were divorced from like an early age, maybe around 9 or 10, something like that. But they were very different as well. My mom was organized and neat and clean. My dad was a little more messy and, a little more messy. So he was also just, different. Like their personalities were very, very different. One thing that they had in common was they were not around very often. So I will give that to them. They had that in common. But it is interesting, bouncing around to the different kind of parenting styles, and it does affect us a lot, growing up. Like,
and I feel like our generation's really a different kind of energy too, because for so long people were told to stay together for the kids or just to stay together and work it out, where our generation, it's rare that I know somebody whose parents are still together, who didn't have to go to different houses and bounce around and see different perspectives of the world. So our generation just has a very different view of life versus somebody who, like our grandparents or even our parents, who had both parents, lived with all their siblings, was, there until 18, and then sometimes lived in the same house their entire life, where you've moved, I don't even know if you could count how many times you've moved throughout your life.
Yeah, so many times, because my mom's been married like 5 or 6 times, and I would move around with her because I just fit personality wise better with her, but then it got to the point where it's like, this is too much. Like your life is very chaotic right now. Like, you're organized and all that stuff, but emotionally you're like you got a lot going on, Mom. You got a lot to take care of right now, because it was not very grounding. Like, my dad was messy, but at least he didn't move. He stayed in one place. Like, he's still basically in the same place.
That's what I'm saying. Some people, they just stay in the same situation for like ever, because they get comfortable, and that's just the rest of their routine. They're okay with playing out that same game over and over.
Yeah. I heard something, and it kind of like, I've been trying to think about it a lot, and it's like every day you wake up, you have two choices. You can evolve, or you can repeat.
Yeah, I think about it too, because if you do the same thing over and over again, you don't get too far. Then why do I have to keep repeating it? Like, go do something else, do something fun, do something expansive, learn something new, read something new, talk to somebody new, do something different.
That's what was great about being a kid. We weren't afraid to just do something and like just keep doing it,
Not feeling self-conscious or fear of what others might say, do, or think. I think it's really important to embrace those kind of traits again, where we don't allow the world around us to really control us in such a way that we forget to explore. We forget to have fun and to be free. I'm part of an art group, and a lot of the artists are like, Shannon, you're so free with your art. You'll just create whatever. Like, you don't have to like sit and plan it out. And I'm like, dude, if I put too much pressure on the creative process, it takes away from the experience. And part of the reason I create as a kid, in my kid-like ways, is because it gives me freedom. It's like the one thing in my life where I can just be completely free. Yeah,
that's the nice thing about art, unless if you've been to art school and you have all these rules that you go by. But
I mean, I went to art school and I learned real quick that it's important to break the rules.
Yeah, I know it is important. Like, draw outside the lines sometimes. Sometimes you just need to have a little bit of fun, and I enjoy the freedom of, being able to do anything I want on a canvas, or, be able to create any kind of world I want to in my stories or in my videos. Being able to talk about literally any subject that I want to is a big thing for me, especially with this sci-fi series that I'm about to come out with. Like, I get to talk about all these topics in like a really fun, super cool way, and I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, I'm excited about your series too, and bringing the Selomverse to life. If you haven't checked out his latest book, guys, go check out the Selomverse 3 short stories, and I'm excited to see him create some other stories to expand on some characters. So that's exciting to see. I'm sure your childhood self would be pretty excited to know that you've created a whole universe.
Yeah, as a kid, I definitely, as a kid to now, there were 3 or 4 times that I had started a novel and something ended up happening. Like, my papers just got misplaced, or my book would get ruined from something, or one time I was traveling and I had to get rid of my car because it broke down, and started hitchhiking, and I had so much stuff. Like, I overpacked times 10, and like I just ended up ditching it. So my younger self is very excited to get something out there. Like, I already got the 3 short stories out there in a hardback copy version, and now we're going to do a video series here. It's going to get started. Once that gets going and rolling, we're going to come out with an audiobook for the 3 fantasy short stories by Shannon Shine. She did the narration for it.
I was excited. It was a really cute little project to be working on, and I hope that people will check out the audiobook when you have it ready to release.
Definitely. And then also I'm going to be having probably a weekly or bi-weekly release of it's going to be an ongoing story that's going to, it's basically going to crack open the Selomverse quite a lot here, and it's going to be the one thing that, it's almost like First Contact in Star Trek. You know how big First Contact was in Star Trek? There's First Contact Day. They celebrate it every year in Star Trek. And it's when the human civilization, when Earth first got contacted by, I think it was Vulcans. And so how that like opened up their universe, the weekly ongoing story will be kind of like that catalyst to opening up the universe and the Sealoverse.
That's exciting. I'm real excited to see the Sealoverse keep coming to life. So
yeah,
first contact is being made in the Sealoverse.
Hey everybody, thank you. And we'd love to hear what you have going on. What was something that you enjoyed the most as a child? Let us know in the Facebook Bring Me to Life community.
Yeah. It can be anything. It can be all kinds of stuff that you could be seeing spark into your adult life. I was actually just sitting here thinking, like, I'm wearing these pants that I pair of leggings that I cut all up and like braided and stuff, and I was thinking about how my younger self like used to love tearing up my clothes and like making my own unique styles, and here I am at 30 still cutting up my clothes and making different designs. And I used to always want to paint my wall and design different things, and was never really allowed, but now I've got my walls covered in canvas so that I can just paint murals as I please and move them around on my walls. So it can be something that you never expected to bring to life in a unique way as a child in your adult life. And what are maybe some little things that you've learned along the way that you didn't think would help you later? And really just embrace that and thank your younger self for taking you on the journey and bringing you something to still find joy in now.
Absolutely. Thank you all for listening. Check us out. We're all over the internet. The Bring Me to Life podcast itself, along with all the other original podcasts on the Bring Me to Life network, you can find by searching Bring Me to Life Network on Spotify, Google, iTunes, Amazon, so many places. If you have a favorite audio app, search, and I'm sure we will be on there.
Leave a comment where you can. Let us know where you're listening. Go find us on Instagram, Patreon. And if you are interested, you can check out again the website. There's different articles and things there. And we're just grateful that you've taken time to be a part of the Bring Me to Life family. So
yeah, and the website is bringmetolife.com.
Yep, bringmetolife.com with the number 2. So.
Awesome. Yes. All right, everybody, stay awake.
Shine on always.
For many of us, spirituality is just the quest to find essence or true meaning and to really just connect with a higher consciousness.
Connecting with your spirituality is very important in this life. By becoming mindful of all of that, you can realize where you are and if that is leading you to where you want to go.
Listen to the little simple things, because it's those little simple things that are going to shift you vibrationally in such a way that will prepare you to become very intuitively minded and ready to step forward on the next part of your path.
I hope you can feel the love that's inside you, that's inside me, that connects us.
Thanks for shining on with us.